Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night with a brand new episode of Star Trek Discovery. One of the few remaining brand new episodes. We are closing in on that series finale, but we still have 3 episodes to discuss, starting with this one, Season 5, Episode 8, Labyrinths. And I got Dave with me to discuss it. Dave, how you doing?
Indeed. I'm doing all right. I'm ready to be quiet and enter the library.
Cool. Well, I see there are some folks in the audience, so let's go ahead and get to it. I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 287th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are discussing Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 8, Labyrinths, written by Lauren Wilkinson and Eric J. Robbins, and directed by Emmanuel Osei-Kuffour. And I'm looking forward to discussing this one with Dave. There's some library fun, some fun in the library. So a lot of people made a big deal about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did think the library was a cool locale. I did not know. I guess it's based in like a real place. Or
Yeah, the first time that library was ever shot, had any movie or TV show shot at it, I believe. So that's why it
But
looks
then
new.
But then they did like CG to make it all gianty, I guess.
Yes, and also CG blow parts of it up.
Yeah, that's cool. I like some hands on, and it reminds me of when they used to do things like use that mall in was it Logan's Run way back in the 70s? Use like a mall in or no, not the mall. It's like that fountain in Dallas with the cool futuristic steps and malls and stuff too, though.
Yeah, or like like the Star Trek Into Darkness used the Gaddis building in LA, like the art museum. That's kind of interesting architecture, or like the the famous water treatment plant that's used for Starfleet Academy, and also the Ito homeworld in Justice, where the blonde people run around in togas.
What must it be like to be like a person who just works or lives around one of those places, and you're just like, oh, I didn't know I was so futuristic, but I guess I'm futuristic.
Yeah, it just looks mundane to the everyday individual. But yeah, we'll talk about some fun in the library and some Breen action in the library and some puzzle solving in just a moment. I do need to give a big thank you and shout out to the lovely Tex-Trek Patreon supporters who make our humble little show possible. So thank you so very much. Starfleet Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Daw, Geek Filter, Quarkspar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, Joel Vallis, Ben Ginium, Arthur Lamoureux, Wanda Valentine, and our anonymous supporters. We are having a lot of celebrations in May. We typically have monthly watch parties with our patrons. We have some extra watch parties when the bridge crew level patrons have a birthday. So we've been celebrating a few of those. We have one coming up tomorrow. If you're watching us live on Friday, May 17th, then tomorrow, Saturday, May 18th, you can join us in the Tex-Trek Patreon. We are watching a double feature. We're actually celebrating Joel's birthday, Patreon member Joel and longtime audience member. We're watching the Lower Decks. We're watching the Star Trek Prodigy episode Time Amok. And that's going to be followed by the TNG episode Home Soil. So a double feature.
Time Amok, is that the Kirk and I can't say her name suddenly. Is that their travel back in time episode?
It's the no, you're thinking of Strange New Worlds. It's the Time Amok is the Prodigy episode where Rock Talk is in the temporal anomaly.
Right. That was
for
a
too
huge
long
episode for me. Yeah, great episode.
It's been that was like Prodigy like episode like I don't know like 7. It was a long time ago. Yeah, literally years ago at this point.
It's been a bit. It's been a minute.
So looking forward to that. And Home Soil, I think I'm actually going to watch twice tomorrow because I'm watching it in the Discord, and then I've also been watching all of Star Trek in kind of in release order with my partner, and we're in TNG season 1 now, and I think we're going to try to do 3 episodes tomorrow, including that one. So
I'm enjoying all y'all's the notes and stuff that from her thoughts and y'all's reactions to the revisit. It's always good.
Yeah, people should follow me on the socials, like at Tex-Trek on anything, Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, Threads. I'm trying to get on all of them now that Elon is doing everything possible to destroy Twitter. And Zuck is doing everything possible to destroy Facebook, so it makes my life much more difficult and much more time-consuming. And I can't really like use social media as a way to stay connected to personal individuals like I used to. It's because the algorithms have destroyed it. So I'm having to use it to promote our podcast, but that's okay. That's it'll be a fun way to connect to people who want to see her first time Trek experiences. She's had some interesting hot takes that I'll be sharing. So
yeah, but like in general, like I know she's having a good time. Maybe not as much so in Star Trek.
TNG season 1 is a major rough spot in the franchise. I'm sorry, there's no other way to say it. I love TNG. It is one of the best television shows ever made in the history of TV. But it is a franchise low point. We just got done watching the original series, which she loved. She loved the animated series, despite, dated animation. She thought the designs were phenomenal. She loved that they got like the voice actor cast in the booths, and she was really impressed with the writing of a lot of those episodes. And then the TOS crew movies are so good. We watched Star Treks 2, 3, and 4 in one night, and then we go from that to like TNG season 1. We go from that one night, and then the next day is Encounter at Farpoint, followed by The Naked Now and Code of Honor. It's like, that is a major downgrade, but it will get better, and she's already starting to see some improvements. After we got past the Ferengi and the last outpost, the show does start to pick up. So,
I suppose part of the Trek experience is weathering the badlands of the show and surviving them.
Well, she comes to Trek from the other Star franchise, so she's familiar with
ups and downs.
The ups and downs, the inconsistent quality, which I think they struggle with a bit more than we do. So, but yeah, we'll have a lot of fun watching Home Soil with the patrons and Time Amok with the patrons, and then the week after that, May 25th. That is a big day, a huge day for us. If you're in the Tex-Trek Patreon, you're gonna watch Crisis Point, a double feature, both Crisis Point episodes of Lower Decks with us to celebrate Aaron Harvey's birthday in the Tex-Trek Patreon. But then May 25th as a whole is a day of celebration of Lower Decks, and hopefully some good will come from it. I've talked about this before, but we are doing a day-long streamathon on May 25th. Aaron has been working really hard to put this together, and we have some other content creators involved. I believe we're going to have Jesse Gender on the stream. We're going to have some friends from Dan Gunther's YouTube channel and podcast, Positively Treks and Kertrex Productions. I think Dan and Brandy. We are going to share some content from our friends at Trek Yards. I believe Giraffe from Strange New Pod, who's been on our show before, is going to make an appearance. So please subscribe to Tex-Trek. Make sure that you don't miss our live stream that we're going to do at 11 a.m. Pacific that morning. But in addition to that, we want as many people as possible to be not just watching Lower Decks at home, but also tweeting about it, posting about it. Share your favorite moments from the show. Talk about things you want to see happen in an upcoming possible future Lower Deck stories. We want to make like a big push, leave as big of an impression as possible, just so whatever higher ups see that, oh yeah, there is a strong appetite for the show, and more importantly, so that all the people who've done like a lot of amazing work on that show over the years that we've enjoyed can feel the love and celebration, because they need to be on the receiving end of some of that too. But, hopefully there will be some good come from that. Alex Kurtzman and Mike McMahon both talk like, the door is open for, if not another season someday, then I think a made-for-streaming movie is extraordinarily likely. So it'd be great to see those storytellers get the opportunity to finish off the story of those characters on the USS Cerritos.
Yeah. And again, like we say every time, Trek's been down this road before. No puns intended, yeah. But Trek has saved itself before. So let's keep that in mind and put out that positive energy.
Yes, and Aaron also wanted us to dedicate this event to the memory of John Trimble, who him and his wife Bijo, they're the ones who invented the Trek traditions of fan activism to save your content or to get more of it. So it's a good way to honor John as well.
Right on.
But there's not really much else in the way of news. So, Dave, I think we should go ahead and get started talking Star Trek Discovery. I'm going to quickly recap the episode Labyrinths by reading the official synopsis, and I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers. The official synopsis reads, when Captain Burnham is trapped within a mindscape designed to test her worthiness to retrieve the Progenitor's powerful technology, Book, Rayner, and the crew of the U.S.S. Discovery must hold off the Breen long enough for her to escape. That is a hell of a long run-on sentence. But Michael does pass the test by facing her own inner fears and anxieties and being true in facing that, and accepting the reality of it. And I guess that was what they needed to do to pass the test of, hey, these people will understand honesty and the big responsibilities of the Progenitor tech. So they have the final puzzle piece, but Maul and the Breen end up taking it from them. Rune is a prick who wants to blow up libraries to get coordinates.
Never cool.
Yeah, but Burnham caves, and then Maul takes him off the throne, takes over.
Maul caves him in.
Yeah. Then we have a Rune cave-in brought to us by Maul. But we end the episode basically with Maul in command of the Breen dreadnought, Burnham and the Disco crew without a spore drive, and both going towards the location of the Progenitor tech. Burnham knows how to get to it, though, and Maul doesn't. That was our episode.
Fatheree, before we get into any specific thoughts, I just want to say, I think it's an interesting challenge that they've had to face, and we don't really talk about this too often, where their spore drive basically allows them to teleport anywhere. So there's always got to be sort of some reason. It's like the Flash in comics or Nightcrawler or something like that. It's like they can get anywhere, so they always have to be up against some overwhelming odds or something that, some reason why them being way ahead of the game doesn't win them the day. It's an interesting challenge that they have to have, and it ends with an interesting version of that, too, in the episode. I guess credit to the writers for keeping the spore drive around this whole time, when I know that had to be a difficult story element sometime, like, oh, why don't they just escape with the spore drive? Why don't they just go right there?
That's why they waited till season 5 before they did like the big chase thing, where it's like, well, yeah, we would just win the race immediately, right, with the spore drive. So
right.
It took them 5 seasons before they could figure out a way to pull that off, I guess. But that is a great point, Dave. It's something I've been thinking about too, and it's something I wonder, what are these Academy writers going to do? The Starfleet Academy show. The pathway drive should be rolled out. Every Starfleet ship should be, whatever the pathway drive is, like it should be like on everything. So however fast that is in comparison to warp and spore drive or whatever, like they're gonna have to face that eventually, so.
Well, don't you think it's just gonna basically be like warp drive, and they're never gonna say anything about it again?
Well, they have to say why it was preferred instead of the spore drive, because it was like we were gonna put the spore drive on every ship, but it turns out pathway drive is better, so we're gonna do that instead.
That is true. Yeah, they're gonna have to bring that up at some point. Because I forgot. I thought that the spore drive was just a little too hard to recreate.
No, because they recreated it. Because remember, they put the prototype on Book's ship. That's why they had to destroy Book's ship to get rid of it.
It's, I mean, admittedly, if every ship could do that, they can all already cloak. If every ship could also just blink around, man, fights are gonna be weird. Spaceship battles are gonna get weird. So, for story purposes alone, it's probably good to rein it in. But yeah, I hope they throw in a little bit of technobabble. And later on in this episode, I think there is a little bit of technobabble that was pretty satisfying. It was TNG style technobabble. We'll talk about it when we get to it. And then I like to see that show up a little bit. So
yeah, I like some technobabble in my Trek. It can get gratuitous and in the way, but a little sprinkle is to be expected with Star Trek.
Yeah.
Dave, why don't you give us the first opening statement of the evening and give us your broad thoughts on this episode before we discuss it in detail in the episode breakdown?
Sure. So to me, this was one of those episodes that magically felt like they knew it was their last season, even though they didn't. That particular thing where they were all about kind of getting into Michael Burnham's headspace, kind of literally in this case, and revealing, the particular pressures that push her and drive her to succeed and how that can sabotage her. Felt like, just like in the episode in the, oh my gosh, where she met her past self, it seemed like another case of, like, let's look at the journey that this character has had. 2 episodes that have focused on it. And this one actually pushed her forward. That one was just her being reflective. But this one, I think, is moving her forward. And I really like that. I like that and the archive. And I kind of picked up that I think people are liking Archivist Hyrel. And I did too.
Yeah, I see a lot of love for her online.
Mm-hmm. I did think it was pretty obvious early on that Burnham was probably being too literal in her questing in this one, and that I was to some degree marking time until she figured out, oh, this is some inward journey I need to complete. So that was a little pacing wise. I don't like to be ahead of the show, and I felt like I was ahead of the show on this one. And I also thought it was held back a bit by, at least for a time, by Primarch Rune. Who I felt was like continuing his audition for the role of Ceres in Galaxy Quest this week. I actually think that he's sort of emblematic of them missing an opportunity with the Breen. I think that they kind of have added surface stuff, but they have not gone anywhere near the depth I might have liked. And maybe I'm somewhat spoiled by Deep Space Nine's recent viewing, but I would have liked to have seen them do a bit of a deeper dive the way that they did. I know that you don't have like 7 seasons of Cardassians, but you can, even in season 1 of Deep Space Nine, I saw some good stuff with the Cardassians, and I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that for the Breen. So I did love, though, when Maul blew his ass away. I was like, go Maul, go. I think it's a good episode. I wish that Rune had, I think that Maul taking him down would have actually still meant more if he had some more Game of Thrones kind of nuance to him. That sense of him jockeying for position with the other Breen, and his strengths and weaknesses of maybe one or two of the other ones. But I enjoyed it, and and I want to mention, I think like the best scene in the episode was a scene that arguably didn't move the plot forward, or at least nothing obviously. There's the scene with Book and the what do they call it? The world root, the cutting from it. What an amazing scene that was. So, but yeah, I liked it.
Right on. And for me, this was another winner for me in a season of winners. I was very happy with the episode. Right off the bat, I got happy when it opened with Breen politics, which I've been enjoying. And I got happy when I saw it was going to be a Book and Burnham focused episode. So 2 things I really like in Disco. But I figured out the reason why I'm so on board with the Discovery take on the Breen, Dave. And I think it's because they found a way to have like their cake and eat it too with what I was willing to accept, I guess, with the Breen, like with what I want and with what I didn't want. Because I feel like, and I think this might have been their intention, but they did something with like the faceless, mysterious bad guy behind the mask thing. They made the boring, faceless, scary bad guy work in the story because Me personally, I didn't want to get to know the Breen too much. I'm happy with the mystery, the mystique around them. But they are cool, and I don't know, maybe because they have like scary armor, but I think they are neat when I see them. But I'm happy they chose to spotlight the Breen through this character Rune, who is this faceless, fickle person. He's so fickle. He's void of any personality or individuality like a lot of real life rulers. I see him as kind of an analog for that hollow, scary image with an empty heart, but with a head that's packed full of agendas. Like a real like politician who has no values other than a hunger for power and will do anything, say anything to play to their crowd and forward their agenda. So I can forgive Rune being a flat 2D character. I would say he's a two-dimensional character, not one. He's got like a little bit of dimensionality, sure. But not much. So I'd say he's a 2D character, but I think it works thematically. And as much as
2D, but 2D, but in the same way that some real warlords and politicians are 2D.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But as much as I have fun with all the Breen stuff, I was fine pausing that for a moment. I like that they kind of front loaded the opening of the episode a lot with that, but then they pause it for a moment, step away from it to do some Book and Burnham stuff, which I really cherish with this being the final season. But I thought it was such a magnificent moment to highlight the character's arc, Burnham's arc, through the entire show. And I like the what actually was the final scientist test, that it was a test for honesty. It makes sense that a betazoid who is used to being able to read people immediately, they're used to being in the same room with a person, and they know that person's level of honesty just by the read they get off of them with their telepath brain. So it makes sense to me that like the betazoid would be like, well, what if these people who show up hundreds of years from now, I won't be around to evaluate their honesty, their sincerity. So that's what I'm going to make my test be. And so in Star Trek, not only is the truth the first duty, like in the episode of the Next Generation, the first duty, when Picard dresses down Wesley and gives him the first duty speech about a Starfleet officer's first duty is to the truth. But the truth is also the final test as well as the first duty. So I like that.
Hey, Father, what season is that? Or what episode and what season? Is
the first duty? That was in season 5, right? Because it was before DS9 started.
Just vaguely wondering when you and your partner were going to hit that. Okay, cool.
June.
Oh yeah, that's right. Y'all got it.
So, yeah, it'll be a while. But all that being said about the episode, all that stuff I liked. I would say I did have some frustrations with this episode, not knowing the rules of the mindscape. I'm slower than Dave. I was kind of like confused when Burnham was confused, but I was frustrated. Just watching like SMG flipping through pages and roaming down library hallways is not super compelling. Just like that stuff, though. I'm not talking about like the final moments with her later when she's like, when the lights are going dim. I loved all of that. But the lead up to that, there were some moments that weren't terribly compelling. So it was a little bit of like that dullness that we had a couple weeks ago in Whistle Speak. The first half of the season was incredibly exciting. I was so excited throughout the first 5 episodes. The only time that I kind of had like some dull moments was in Whistle Speak and then a little bit here. But I'm not too worried about like the overall pace of the season. We haven't seen these last 2. They're whatever's going to be like their big finale. But I am kind of relieved this is a 10 episode season and not 13, 14, whatever. It feels like there should only be 2 more episodes. I think that's right.
There's a pretty solid pacing balance, I think, right now.
Like it would be weird if we were on episode 8 and it was like, oh, by the way, there's still going to be like 5 more episodes after this.
Right.
So
yeah, the bad guy essentially has been revealed. The end game is in sight. It feels like they're moving towards it, and it'd be weird if they weren't. If they had a lot of space between.
Let's start off with our episode breakdown and the opening with the Breen funeral and then the arrival at the library. But let's talk the Breen first. We're back on the Dreadnought ship, and Rune performing the funeral, the big ceremonious funeral for the fallen Scion. You can kind of see Maul start playing politics right off the bat there with the Lieutenant Alistar, whatever, Aristal, whatever their name was, but when they put their hand on Maul to like remove like the grieving wife from her dead husband's casket, when she kind of looks up at him like, oh, you kind of grabbed me like gently, you didn't like force me away, you have some sympathy for me, I'm gonna milk the hell out of that. And Rune sees it too.
Yeah, Rune is on that, and I thought that was an interesting time early on in the episode where he can recognize it, and but like he's like, you can only go so far. He's like, I'm watching you, and all of that, and so there was an interesting balance to be struck. Now, let me just quick ask you: was she the whole time sort of, and any time that she had an opportunity doing it deliberately? Like, was she doing it as a not scam, but a rightful plan, or were there times when she was just instinctively doing what she felt, and it happened to play well to the Breen? Was there any time that it wasn't a plan?
Yeah, I think she's more of a long game, big picture person than Locke, just based on some of their earlier interactions. So yeah, I think she was kind of planning this out. She's the one who in the first episode, she tells Locke, are you going to settle for the pebbles or do you want the entire mountain? You know, she's always been the one who's kind of more of like the big picture. And, it kind of helps you buy the, it is a little ridiculous that this, woman who's imprisoned at the beginning of the episode and in 45 minutes, she can, basically become like the queen on the throne. But
pretty solid. Yeah.
I feel like if you see the little subtle thing she does in the beginning, you can see like, okay, she is working on this the whole time.
Jill in the audience said Maul is a more complex villain than Rune. Just the fact that we're wondering about that shows that. But yeah, and I mean, totally. It makes sense. She is the more developed and more focal point character than he is. He was there to be the big bad, to be an obstacle. I do wish he had more depth, but yeah, I can compliment her without having to necessarily knock down him.
The way that she spills the beans on the progenitor tech to the masses to use that to get her freedom. She holds up her shackles to the crowd and says, "I want to be set free so that I can help get the progenitor tech and resurrect our scion." It's like, well, if Rune doesn't set her free right then and there, he looks like a jerk. So. That's like his anger, his frustration. I like him being like so mad, but he can't like act on it. He's just got to like sit there and take it.
Yeah, there was some nice moments of writing and that kind of feeling those unique pressures. We don't see too many scenes like that.
Well, like the Discovery arrival at the Badlands library, that was kind of neat how there's like the little buoy on the outskirts of the Badlands. I assume the Badlands is like huge, so a bit odd that just the spot that the disco spore jumped to happened to be like next to the buoy. But
that is a little bit lucky, although maybe there's lots of them. I mean...
Yeah, maybe. Visually, though, it looked cool, so it was a convenient way to show the geography of everything to the audience. And then we got our introduction of Hyrel, the archivist. I like that she had like this long like speech that would have explained like the turbulence coming into the Badlands and stuff. But when Burnham is like in a hurry and is like, oh, I'll just like give you the speech while you're moving. Okay, so you're gonna miss the whole warning.
She was almost felt like early on like she was sort of a parody of the museum tour guide or the librarian. I was even thinking for a minute of the, oh my gosh, who's the SNL comedian who's in Pee-wee's Big Adventure giving the tour of the Alamo? And, he just wants to be like, where's the basement? And she's like, please hold all questions until the end. And then she's like, we see her talking about how they made maize and stuff like that. But yeah, Burnham wasn't having it. She's just like, hey, can we speed this up? And at first I was not quite on board. What's her name? Hyrel. Because I thought she was like, this feels like more like a Lower Decks character to me. She's a little silly. Like, how can you not be worried when there's threats coming on that level? But when when she said, "Oh, how fun to have a book visit me in the library for a change," I was like, okay, all right, I'm liking her. And then she talked about how they would at least theoretically face the Breen. It didn't seem to pan out.
That was when she won me back over. I was kind of over this character with the dungeon joke or the omelette joke. Why are you saying omelette or
Oubliette?
Yeah, like. Okay, you're using a word that, like, people only use when they want to be like, hey, look, I think I'm smarter than you because I know this stupid, obscure word.
And Fatheree, that word was in the movie Labyrinth.
But then it won me back over when she did the oh, how fun for a book to visit me joke.
By the way, do we know, I'm sure we'll talk about this in the Gorn Eggs, do we know what race she is?
We do.
Okay, cool. We'll come around to that. I to some degree do you think that she feels a little like a Lower Decks character? Like just a little larger than life.
I think she feels like a real, like a librarian. Like people like she's a 21st century librarian. Like I don't know. I know several librarians and they kind of act like her. So just like nerdy, perky people like.
I suppose so. I felt like her kind of cheeriness, even in the light of the threat, felt a little silly.
I like the confidence, though. I like that they're like, oh, like this ancient gallery. Yeah, it makes sense. Like this isn't the first time they've had like a scary threat roll up on them. So I kind of liked the confidence of that.
Yeah, and after a little while, I was like, you know what? The library episode, I kind of like having some fun elements to it. Libraries are cool places. They let it be a cool place. I like scary libraries too, like in that Doctor Who episode, but this one the library was primarily a place of learning and self-exploration, and it looks awesome, and wouldn't it be cool to visit? And so I think having a fun character associated with it ultimately was a good idea.
It would have been nice to see more of it, to see like some of the other people who work there, other archivists maybe, or to see her do more. Like if she like was able to, I heard someone suggest this, but what if she could, bust out some cool like ancient weapons that they had archived away, or what if she could get scrappy too and fight off some Breen too, If she's so well read, maybe she would like know like some really good Breen combat or something. That
would have been a fun little aside. I think they could have taken just a few minutes to do something like that.
Or if she's like so brainy, like the idea of like Nimoy thought that Spock would be above a karate chop to the neck. He thought that Spock would to knock someone out would know like some type of cool secret nerve pinch. And so the Vulcan nerve pinch was invented. I feel like if this character is like so well read, she would know like some cool secrets like that. But maybe some other day we'll see. Maybe we'll get like a book about the adventures in the gallery or in the archive or whatever.
Yeah. I suspect that many a writer would have fun doing that.
I was happy that it was pairing Book and Burnham together because I love this couple, and I'm so excited to see them get back together before the end of the show. I'm very hopeful that it will happen, and I think it's fun right now that just to add in some fun sparks. They do have some tension about Book is still butthurt about Burnham backing the plan to send Maul off, and they kind of like acknowledge it, but they're still. But they're gonna work through it, and I like that there's like that I don't know, there's like that little bit of tension there just to keep it like interesting.
Yeah, for sure. They I think that tension sets up that that it's in her head when she goes into her mindscape sort of thing. So you can't quite shake stuff like that. Sometimes it's just needling you in the back of the head, even if she has to be mission focused, it's still there.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of describing it, Dave. But yeah, that's totally why Book is so much on her mind there in the library. It's she, even if it's just like subconsciously, she's dealing with this big, larger red directive mystery, but in the back of her head, she's thinking like, man, it really looks like I might get back together with Book. I'm super excited about that. Like, oh no. That looks like that just got derailed. I guess that's not happening. Yeah, obviously that's going to be taking up a huge part of her psyche.
Yeah, arguably sublimating it has probably been incredibly frustrating for her.
So in the library, they split them up into two different viewing rooms. They wanted the Quajon on board to come look at the Quajon item. Let's talk about like books item first. The root from the part of the world root from Quajon. You talked about this moment in your opening statement, Dave. This is like, yeah, one of the most powerful scenes of the entire show.
It was almost like he did a monologue, but the monologue was like just bare minimum of words and primarily purely physically and visually acted out. And man, he brought his A game to it.
Yeah, I keep talking about like how good David Ajala is, and especially like these like really emotional moments. I think that's why they keep giving Book all this terrible stuff. That's why like they blow up his planet and like all. I'm for real because like they know like David Ajala can find like a new level of pain like in his heart to explore and like throw himself like through that agony and torment and do it in front of a camera and make beautiful art to put on our screens. It's amazing to watch. It is a gift to our Star Trek franchise.
But you know what? And this was a case of not pain, but joy.
Yeah.
It's so overwhelming that I it does mingle with the pain, of course. But that was really a beautiful thing, and I loved that Hyrel said that he could have it as a gift, and that it seemed like I like this future idea that maybe museums of the future and libraries of the future are these more moral entities. I don't think libraries are moral, but there's a lot of museums we know are a lot of pilfered shit. A lot of stolen colonialist history to them, and so the idea that this kind of represents this is how in a good future we're going to handle this kind of thing. We're going to interact with people and we're going to try to help them, and that's really cool.
Yeah, that she just asked him, like, can you identify it? And then says, like, okay, well, you can have it, but just come back someday and tell us what becomes of it so that we can have that info. Because that's all we care about is preserving information. We're the archivists. So, as long as we have that information, that's, like, the main thing. But I love that, like, she asked him, like, can you identify it? Because I think that, like, they already knew that it was... They obviously, like, knew it was from Quajon, but, like... Just she needed like that confirmation just so like, oh, that was like a really beautiful moment, and now I can check the little box on my little sheet here. They're like, okay, we got like a Quajon person to confirm it is actually what we suspected, part of the world root. But I love so much that she gives him a promise to keep at the end when she tells him like, okay, you can have this gift, and all we ask in return is that you promise us that you'll come back and tell us what becomes of it. Because as a courier, that was his thing. That's like the big thing of being a courier that he talked about, that Cleveland Booker IV, his mentor, taught him, was that when you're a courier, you got to be a man of your word. That's how you make a living, that you promise to deliver, and then you show up and you're there. And so he's all about that life. So that's like the best way to like give him a gift is to also give him a promise to keep. And I also need to give a thank you to Matthew Averett for the very generous $5 super chat, who says, just stopping by in to support. Love y'all. Thank you so much, Matthew. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. You know what, Fatheree? You know what I want at the end of the season? Maybe as part of the new footage that they filmed when they knew it was their last season. I want, I'm not usually like necessarily a big marriage and weddings guy, but I want Book and Burnham to tie the knot under like an archway with the root hanging over them, like or binding them together. I think that'd be a lovely thing, especially
I want a wedding for sure. I was thinking it was going to be Saru and Tarina, but why not make it like Book and Burnham? Or
yeah, that's
just do a double wedding like Flash and Arrow did.
I mean, I kind of like that idea too. So I'd be here for it. I think.
My world root theory is that the Progenitor tech will be used to make new Quajon. We'll bring back the planet.
That'd be a good place for a wedding.
yeah. Maybe they get married there under the Tullywood trees or whatever. The trance worms are like I want the trance worm like all the animals like Book is like Snow White in the Seven Dwarves. Like when he goes like out in the wilderness, like all the animals like love him and start like dancing around, right? Like he's out there like Snow White, right?
Yeah, presumably so. He should have done that. He should have turned made the butterflies in that episode all just vanish away from the people that was helping them fly. They would just plummet to the ground.
I guess like the butterfly people control the butter. They're like what Aquaman is to fish, like they are to butterflies, and it overpowers Book.
I think that's true.
Because like they're like, hey man, we only do this with butterflies. You do it with everything. So like you can't have butterflies too. You can't take that from us. That's our thing.
Like Flash has to be the fastest. Superman can't be faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that's true. Also, I don't think he would try and he wouldn't ever do his empathic connection to animals to hurt people. He just wouldn't.
Yeah, he wouldn't want to implement the animal in his violence.
Right.
Well, let's get into Burnham's viewing room and her mindscape adventure. When she's sent into like this dream world that conveniently uses the same sets as the awake world there, so that made it easy on the production team. But we get what I call a Time Lord book. You know, Doctor Who is really trendy right now. So when you got a British actor speaking in their native accent, wearing like a robe with weird shoulder pads like that, it's hard not to think of a Time Lord.
Yeah, and you know what? I think just to see, he had this very emotional sequence earlier, but this was like him getting to have a bit of fun. This was like, you know, this reminded me of like kind of the sensei in a martial arts movie. You know, like, oh, I'm here to help you, but I'm also going to be kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, or like Yoda in the other Star franchise.
Absolutely, he's part of that tradition as well.
Yeah, Lucas talked a lot about like creating that character. They're like the goofy little kind of a mystical creature, but it'll actually give the hero like a lot of wisdom if they can be patient enough to deal with it.
Yeah, I like the idea that wisdom kind of can intermix with playfulness. It's a fun story element. I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but I would like to think that you never want to get so wise you kind of can't be a little fun and absurd too, and so.
But you've talked about this on the show before, Dave. But Star Trek often gives its actors opportunities to play, multiple versions of the characters or multiple characters. Like we'll just turn Spock human and make Ethan play human Spock, or. Right. We'll just have a Mirror Universe version of Michelle Yeoh and make her play Mirror Universe Giorgio, or what have you.
Yep, or you're all going to get transported into a storybook fantasy in Strange New Worlds, and everybody gets to play some wild incarnation of a character from a fairy tale.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago when Wilson Cruz played Janal, you pointed out how like Trek does that a lot. So
yeah, fun for the actor, example here. And also. Maybe thematically it speaks to how people contain multitudes. I know some of these are not meant to be deep cuts. The storybook stuff was not like meant to be super deep, but Kirk getting split into good and evil absolutely was. There's definitely times when they do it, but yes, on just a pure fun viewership level, it's great to watch these actors get to try out different stuff.
Yeah. Also save some money on the production when you don't have to hire guest star actors. You just use the people you already have on payroll. But
sure, these things. You have to have practical restrictions on just about every storytelling medium.
But yeah, Burnham wastes a lot of time, I guess, looking up books on the Dominion War. It's strange that they didn't. I feel like to kind of break up I found it dull. I don't know if other people did, but they could have broken up the dullness by adding in some cool little Easter egg here. Like, what if they had like a book written by Jake Sisko, like Tales of the Dominion War by like the letters on my father's desk during the Dominion War by Jake Sisko, or whatever you call it, just something like that.
That would have been cool.
But yeah, so Burnham wasted a lot of time looking through books she didn't need to look through. All she had to do was like go back to the room that she came from. But then even that didn't pass the test. I guess it was just like when she cries, when she just sits there and cries, just like admits the truth. I guess that's what it was. When she was able to realize why the conditions of the dream were what they were and admitted it to herself and to the hologram program, whatever, that was running the dream.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like they don't quite spell out like exactly what was being tested, but well, before I mention that, I want to say I felt her frustration as someone who has both enjoyed but been frustrated by, say, escape rooms. And I've also played board games that simulate that same experience too. Use like an app for a timer. You spend a lot of time trying to figure out what the game wants you to do. It's not just like an individual riddle. You're like, well, what kind of riddles even is the game doing? Or do these make sort of logical sense? Do they make sense only within their own style of riddle? All that kind of stuff. And at a certain
Did you know
point,
what she was talking about with Tremu's algorithm, by the way, when she mentions that?
No, I thought that was an invented thing. I didn't know.
No, that's like actual, like that's what you can use to solve complex mazes.
Oh, interesting.
But
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt, though. I'll let you finish
right.
your thought.
I think the moment where she says, I like this, where she kind of asserts herself and she's like, screw you, I'll find my own way out. But of course, that's the important thing is like she had to mine her own psyche, I guess, to prove it. It's sort of, I guess makes sense. This was one designed by a Betazoid, right?
Yeah, Zoid is the planet, or Zed is the planet, Zoid are the people.
That's what I was stuck on. And yeah, it's like how do you do these tests that you design, not knowing is somebody going to find this in 50 years, 100 years, or in their case, what 800-ish years?
Yeah.
And still test the person and. So yeah, she had to kind of show that first duty, but like to turn it on inward, turn it on herself in a very specific way, seemed to satisfy their parameters. She figured out how to get out of the escape room.
Before it got serious, there were a couple of funny moments in there. Like I think I chuckled when she said, when she was saying like, "Oh, I wish I had chosen Tilly or whatever." But then at some point, Book says Tilly would have been just as frustrating for what it's worth. I thought that was funny. And then yes. I kind of had the reaction I think the writers wanted me to have when the Book character. I guess we can call it Book, whatever you want to call. I guess it's like the actual Betazoid, that Marina talking through the David Ajala, basically like playing her. But that entity tells Michael that, oh yeah, by the way, if you don't figure this out and get out of here before the lights go off, you'll die, as like a security measure. And I was like, that's a bit extreme. But then Michael says, well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Janal almost fed us to those things back on Trill. So I was like, oh, yeah, I guess these people are pretty serious about these tests. So not that surprising after all. But Sonequa Martin Green emotes so well. Like I can't look at like these long shots of her crying and not like not tear up myself. I just buy into it hook, line, and sinker whenever I stare into her face during those monologues.
Well, self-analysis is probably about like the toughest thing you can do. It's, when you start poking at yourself.
And it's so much like I think lines up with the character we've seen over the last 5 years. I mean, they brought up a lot of the stuff before about her, how she is a bit of a responsibility hoarder. They've pointed out, and I guess her saying that like this all comes from her anxieties. They're all talking about like her anxieties. They never say the word anxiety, but when she says I'm afraid of Lot, but not of death. And what she's fearing is failure, and like it's her anxieties. When she says like it makes her feel like small and weak. That was so sad. That was hard for me to hear as just like an audience member listening.
Well, I suppose the same way that people in the real world sort of put up barriers to cover pain, It's like, even though we have extra insights in, like, we're watching it as a TV show, we're seeing private scenes and stuff like that. But I think we broadly think, oh, Burnham, oh, she's more confident now. She's kind of gotten out of the rougher place she was in the early seasons, and she's been able to enjoy life a lot, and have this relationship with Book, even though it did sort of break down. But you kind of forget that, it's almost, I think few people are not in some way struggling, even if you hit like a place where there's a sort of equilibrium in your life, oh, you got a good job, you are in a good relationship or something. There's still going to be things that are kind of haunting you a little bit. And it was a little startling to be reminded that that's still going on with our lead character.
On the Ready Room, David Ajala talked about performing in the scene, and he said it was kind of, I think he actually used the word uncomfortable, sitting across from Sonequa Martin Green, because he said he felt like he was watching so much of her own private feelings expressed, that I feel like it was pain, as I'm saying, as painful it is for us to experience, it was painful for him to sit across from the table and witness it firsthand. But I think that also might have been an influence on the writing. Sonequa Martin Green, as a producer on the show, has had a lot of influence on the writing in seasons 4 and 5. I think more of it shows up in 5. Just things I've heard her talk about for years, I kind of see in the show now. And one of the things that I think that they were going for there is that idea of, it's so important for this character to feel like they can't fail. They have to succeed at everything, because I mean, I'm not a member of that community, so it's not my experience to speak from, but just from things that I've heard that I want to echo. But as a woman of color, there's a lot of pressure that if you are a failure, then you're also going to let down a lot of other women of color. It's going to be used to, or you could say this about any marginalized group, I think, to some extent. But it's like you're letting that entire community down, because your failure will be used to deny others opportunities, and so that's like an added pressure, and different from Michael's added pressure, I think, but I think certainly something that people can relate to.
Right, and I think we talked about this, especially I think maybe in Picard, where I think Patrick Stewart, like, more of him came through in the character of Picard in the show Picard.
Yeah.
Over time, and
yeah.
I think as Sonequa has, or as Michael Burnham has, I think, kind of come out of a little bit of her Vulcan sensibilities early in the show. I think more Sonequa Martin Green has come through in the character in very positive ways. And so I think you make a very good point here, that I think that kind of that does feel like that's the sort of thing that's coming through. That the particular weight of someone who's marginalized and feeling pressures kind of above and beyond just even normal person running captaining a ship.
And I've said this on the show before, but I think a big theme in Discovery, I think it was in season 3 when I started picking up on this, but a lot of it is about like self-discovery.
Right.
Self-discovery. A lot of it is about like facing, I talk about like all the mirror themes, all these mirror thematics in Discovery, but yeah, it like, I mean, that goes together right there. The self-reflection and the mirror theme tie together quite well.
I won't say that I haven't at times thought that Discovery was a little too touchy-feely, but I think that the kind of the backlash it's gotten for kind of characters wearing their hearts on their sleeves, trying to learn to process things and talk about it with other people, I think the uncomfortableness they feel is actually very revealing about where we are in society right now, and that. There is, this is something that the show will be looked at again, 10 years, 20 years, and we'll be like, oh, wow, like that's interesting that there was just so much backlash, that it hurts so much to see a character cry that, we had to like really pillory it and bring it down in, endless comment sections of the internet and stuff like that. Because, yeah, that's absolutely a thematic to the show.
Yeah,
and it's something that we should be, as a society, as a people, moving forward with and embracing. But it's the old habits die hard. Even, and I'll say it for myself too. Sometimes that's the case.
And I think it's cool that the show didn't back down from those criticisms. They were like, no, we're gonna have Michael Burnham cry, and her crying is actually what will get the final puzzle piece and reveal the progenitor tech. The secrets of the universe will be revealed because Michael can cry on camera.
Yeah, they kind of they deserve to thumb their noses a little bit at people, but I think they're doing it with the right intent of trying to help. That doubling down is the right move in this one. Do not. We saw Star Wars knuckle under after, was it Last Jedi or Last Jedi? Yeah. And kind of bow to fan pressure. It's nice, Star Trek is not perfect, but I think that this is like the opposite of that sort of unfortunate behavior we saw in Star Wars, and so applause to the Trek producers for doing that.
Yeah, so sometimes you can listen to fan reactions a bit too much. Like sometimes it's good, like with Sonic the Hedgehog, they fixed that. But sometimes you get the rise of Skywalker, so good to keep that in mind. I don't know if I have anything else on the Burnham Mindscape stuff. So if you're good, I think we can. I guess like the other thing there is that version of book does tell Michael, there is a secret to getting to the progenitor tech coordinates, though, that I'm going to tell you that'll be very important in the next episode that I'm just going to say off screen that the audience will have to wait a week to know about.
That's all right. A little cliffhanger is good for the good.
Yeah, it's exciting. Now people have a week to speculate, so fun stuff. Well, let's talk about like all of the non-dream stuff that was going on before Burnham wakes up. But the dreadnought, the Breen dreadnought arrives at the library, and we get that. I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight. We get that conversation between Rune and Hyrel.
Yes.
She's pretty tough, when she doesn't cave easily to Rune. And he's a prick.
He is. I was sort of surprised. I thought that this library did have some kind of giant, equivalent of a ruler to smack his knuckles with. But they didn't seem as well defended as I thought. I was actually concerned about. I was like, when the Breen were running around in there, I'm like, they're shooting books. Somebody.
Yeah, I heard someone else say that. I think our friend Stuart at Trek Yards. I think I know he's got like a big book collection he's proud of. So he was like, that was like a big no when he saw that. He was like, what? Like how dare you disgrace a book?
I like to think that with some programmable matter that those books will actually be restored to precisely the state they were in. It's not like they probably haven't been endlessly scanned in every possible dimension and stuff like that. So.
But it also shows Primarch Rune kind of breaking with his minions a little bit when they're reluctant to attack the library. That one person is like, but Primarch, and then he just like pulls out the gun to shoot him.
Yep. He brought to you by the same scene of trying to force Locke to shoot Maul, kind of action movie tropes. I was. I will say, well, that scene was kind of very mustache twirly. It did sort of pay off just a few seconds later when or I don't know if it was a few minutes later, when Maul got to, send him to his maker.
Yeah, and you figure like a lot of the Breen witnessing that we're probably happy to see that, but if they are supposed to be like these people who I don't know, like they're so like full of themselves, I guess that's like every like bad guy race in Star Trek. They're all like, oh yeah, like we're like the best alien and everyone else sucks. But I guess that's kind of how a lot of
nationalism.
A lot of that in real life historically. So I guess that tracks, but. If you have a guy who's like willing to destroy sacred Breen artifacts, maybe that will turn some of his men against him. That'd be like, I don't care if the Constitution is in that building, blow it up anyways. That might get some patriotic Americans against you. So. The tunnel into the Breen shield technology, I wish that they had like a better word for it than tunnel. It just sounds kind of dumb when they keep saying like, what can we do to stop their tunnel? And just like, oh, well, what if their tunnel did this? Or like, I don't know. I just wanted to
think so. I thought it was kind of cool.
I would have just called it a positron beam, but I don't, I guess they thought that was like too techno-babbly, but.
Well, it was meant to, am I correct? It was meant to bore a hole through the shield?
Yeah, I don't think they're like running down like a tunnel. I think that it's like beaming. It's just beaming their signal through. But I wish that they had visualized that by like showing the Breen materialize somewhere in the library. Like they can't materialize in the exact room that Book and Rayner are in, but they materialize nearby and then have to like run over there or something.
Yeah, all things considered, I was surprised they didn't show a little bit more library shooting action and didn't show the Breen arriving. Maybe even play up a little bit of their threat by having a few librarians come up and be like, this is unheard of, and get their ass knocked to the ground and knocked unconscious and just be like, oh, these guys are brutal and dangerous, Like, it's an opportunity for it that they could have easily taken.
Yeah. I would have done more shots of that and less shots of Burnham pouring salt on the floor. But
well, when they did show scenes from it, it was like that first person POV.
First person shooter perspective.
Book was kind of kicking some ass, and again, this is a case where
and Rayner was talking shit too. There's more of that down here, you gelatinous assholes.
I saw was that racist? I don't know if it's racist or not, or if it's just being a tough guy. But yeah, I think probably was cathartic for him. But here's the thing: is like they've made out the Breen to be so very tough. I felt like just like a few of them should have gotten through. Let's just say 4 of them had gotten through, and it's like, what if those 4 alone were like, oh, we can barely keep them back. We're fighting a running. Exit, all we can do is retreat. They're so dangerous. Why not go ahead and show how dangerous these guys are again? They're, show us their badass beyond their big swinging dick shit.
We haven't seen the Breen do any damage. There's some injuries, I guess, to the library people, but like the Breen haven't like killed anyone. They haven't really done much damage yet.
Yeah, there's a rare case where I feel like the bad guys, I need to see a little bit more atrocities. It doesn't even have to be like a true atrocity. Like I'm saying, they could have literally just kind of brutally knocked out some librarians and stuff like that, and I think it would have read as violent because the librarians are just so peaceful.
Or have someone be like that is a sacred scroll of Rigel 12. There's only 3 of those in existence, and you have like a Breen asshole just rip it in half or something, like he doesn't care or something. Just show them like being a bit more monstrous so that we can build up some dislike for them and hopefully enjoy the comeuppance when they're defeated. I did like the Rayner and Book action stuff. I do wish we had like a bit more of it.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's cool to indulge some action tropes. Trek has always been had a foot in the action adventure genre, and so yeah, it's kind of cool to see these dudes kick some, and it's an unusual partnership. It's the salty old dog and the guy he probably wouldn't get along with if they were having a conversation about anything else.
And during that stuff, you do see Maul playing Breen politics when she says to the Primarch, like, "Why don't you send me over there? Then you can stop losing guys." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to send you over." And then she's like, "See, this guy doesn't care about any of you." Last episode I took down 3 Federation security agents in hand-to-hand combat. I can take these Starfleet peons, and he's not going to send me over there. He's just going to send all of y'all to your deaths. So she's working it.
Yeah, she should have pointed out. She's like, I took down named character Non and named character Dr. Culber. That's not nothing.
And Book gets that injury. He gets like shot in the stomach or whatever. And I was like, I did not care. I was like, oh, well, they're gonna get to sickbay, and Doctor will wave a light over it, and he'll be fine. So I thought that was kind of a weird way to milk some I don't know.
Yeah, generally, if you're not literally
Suspense.
about to die, we know you're going to be okay. But, I'm sure it does happen. It's like, well, they can miraculously cure everything, but sometimes you're going to get tagged. And it's still going to hurt. You're not going to like it.
Let's talk about when Burnham does wake up, and then I know people like it when I call the space battle stuff ship on ship action, but we get some ship on ship action in the Badlands. I like when Burnham woke up, by the way, like immediately, like her and Book, like they cling to each other. They kind of like immediately, like, oh, the most important thing for me to do right now is acknowledge Book. So that was cute to see. But yeah, she knows exactly where the last pieces. It's in the viewing room 7 and that crystal. So this was exciting to me. Remember how in Whistle Speak I complained about how, oh yeah, Burnham is having like pop the hood on that little computer console and call Adira for tech support and press some buttons. That's not terribly exciting problem solving in Whistle Speak. But then here, when it's like, oh, hurry up and grab the crystal, hurry up and get it before these Breen beam in and shoot you. Like, oh no, they're here. We got to beam out now. I love like the fast-paced urgency, danger of all that. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah. There was very down to the wire. A part of me was still like, that crystal's still a library piece of property. But no, I like the scene. I like the immediacy of it.
And then we get the disco comes out of where it was hiding in the Badlands. It was cool to see, I guess, Reese in command of the ship for a bit. Didn't do much, but just like, just some cool captaining. Makes sense, tactical situation, leave tactical officer in command. But Burnham's back, so we get a little bit of combat, get the dreadnought attacking the library, and that's when Burnham does the choice to give them, basically, like, catch the Breen up to where she is. Well, not quite. I guess she has a trump card. Yeah, that makes her decision here make more sense, doesn't it? Like, she knows that, okay, if I give them the coordinates, they're not going to know whatever secret thing I know of how to get to it. So...
Is it one of those, is there going to be some dudes at the door, and he's like, every one of us can only tell the truth. One of us can only tell lies. It's going to be a full-up scene from Labyrinth. That's the ultimate follow-up.
I mean, I wasn't even thinking of that movie too much, but Discovery does love to reference Bowie, so maybe there was some...
wasn't Gates McFadden the dance choreographer?
That is true, yeah. She did the choreography.
But yeah, she's like, Burnham doesn't want anybody to die here, so she makes the hard choice of giving the bad guys the information and kind of counts on, A, she does know at least one secret, B, Spore Drive is going to get him there faster. It's a gambit, but it's like, well, it seems like we were talking about last episode, this is all in the Alpha Quadrant. They can get ahead, but not so ahead, but they're that's a gambit you could take, though. Like, let's just do it fast. We got to get it done quick.
And she's dealing with someone who seems like not very thoughtful. Like, yeah, this guy might actually, blow up this library. Like he would really go that far. So, sometimes, dealing with dangerous people, you gotta make a uncomfortable choice. What did we say last week about turning Maul over? The least bad choice.
Yeah. Torino was like, there's more good possibilities in doing that than there are in the other option. It's just,
I do like in this episode you get kind of the Breen interpretation of like the good of the many. Is kind of like to save the few they will risk the many. It's kind of like, it's like a very cynical like Breen way of looking at it, I guess, of like how foolish it would be, to not think of the good of the many over the good of the few. It's like, well, who would do that? Who would risk many to save a few?
Yeah, that sounds like the Phantom Zone villains in Superman 2, where he's like, he actually cares for them, like pets, I suppose. But yeah, the Breen have, I'm going to say a lot of their truisms are kind of morally bankrupt. Maybe a Federation person can give him a speech.
Well, they have a a pretty big regime change at the end of this episode. So I guess there's going to be some instabilities in Breen. Well, I don't know. I don't know how big this Primarch's forces extend. Maybe it's just the ship. I guess he only has the ship, but
I'm curious to see where this goes because I can't quite predict it. I mean, a best case scenario is, the Breen don't get the Progenitor's tech, but they are able to revive the Scion, and he and Maul preside over them with progressive-ish values, or although it's not like they were great people, what the values of the best thieves? I don't know. But I don't know where that leaves anyone quite. I'm curious to see where that goes. But before we mention that, I want to say, Father, you did have a slide up a minute ago, one of the screen caps of is this the first time we've seen the Breen shooting? It looks like instead of phasers or disruptors, it's almost like charged beams of lightning, visually at least.
Yeah, they have some interesting looking guns on the front of their ship. I guess we saw Breen on the attack in Deep Space Nine and Lower Decks, but this is the first we've seen of this 32nd century technology. So it's intimidating, when they are firing on Disco, when they're firing on that archive building. The VFX guys did a good job of making it stand out.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I thought they did a good job with the fake disco explosion when they that was kind of that was something like they hadn't done. Like, what if we make it look like we explode as we jump away? I guess that happened for real to the Mirror Universe Discovery. Like, it exploded, but it would have been odd if the show ended and then someone like wrote a comic or wrote a novel or something set on the Discovery where they do a spore jump and fake an explosion. I'd be like, that was like a great, clever idea. I'm surprised the show never did that. So I'm glad they got it in here before the final episode.
Yeah, they did look. They looked bad though when they came out of the spore jump.
It was like you were saying, they had to nerf the spore drive for the finale. So
now and they landed outside of the city limits basically, and that's like essentially it's like they're gonna have to run to get to back into the city limits. And I imagine that Dreadnought's going to be booking it.
Yeah.
They're not getting granular with details about warp speeds and things like that. But I have to think, even if they thought that they destroyed Discovery, the Breen are probably not going to rest on their laurels.
Yeah, no, Maul is hauling ass she's making a beeline to these coordinates right now.
I wonder, was it worth it for Burnham to even do that? Maybe they shouldn't have done that. Just jump and be at full power. But
she didn't know that the Primarch was about to die. Like, she didn't know.
I guess that's true. She thought a dumber person would be running the show.
Yeah, I guess like that. It's scarier now. It's scarier now with Maul in charge because she's not an idiot. Like.
But she's also not brutal in the way that the Breen traditionally.
But she's mad with love. Like that can make someone pretty dangerous.
Right.
Let's talk about like the ending with the Primarch and his what would you call his usurping? Yeah, he is usurped by Maul.
Yeah, he's coup d'état. He's usurped. He's overthrown. He's Julius Caesar. He's lots of different possibilities here. I couldn't remember that maybe they've done this plenty of times. I don't know, but have we seen the Breen shoot their little sticks there before?
Yeah, they had those sticks to just like poke Worf with when Worf and Ezri were captured, but they couldn't use them as energy projectile weapons, I don't believe. So that was a new use of it. But I liked I don't know, it made sense to me, like the play that they went with here, because they built up enough cult of personality around the Scion that like. Okay, I can imagine like these Breen falling in line real quick behind Maul, behind the wife of the Scion. Like imagine this from like the Breen perspective. If you're one of these Breen soldiers, you're like, holy shit, this is the best day of my life we're about to bring the Scion back to life, and then he's going to become emperor, and I'll be serving under like the true born, like undead Breen emperor from beyond the grave. I'm like one of his loyal servants who went with his wife to go like resurrect him. Like we're about to be like the coolest Breen who've ever existed. You know, like this is awesome for us.
Right. Return from death is generally the place, the lore from mythology and stuff like that.
So I buy it. It's a big pill to swallow. Like you know, this little girl just took over the big bad dreadnought ship. But I buy the story they told me.
Well, what you know of Rune's few smart plays, pumping up the Scion. He said that what was it? He said that. Hang on, I was looking at my notes in here. Yeah, he was like, though he defied us in life, still we honor him in death.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he thought that Locke's murder, as he put it, would galvanize the other factions behind him. So I'm sure he was leaning into what a great guy his nephew was. And so yeah, he had inadvertently created the possibility for his own coup.
Yeah. He messed it up. He messed it up when that one dude was like the goal is Locke, and then he says the goal is whatever I say it is, and zaps the dude like that. Yeah. Like Maul saw that and was like, okay, here's my shot. He just proved he doesn't care about Locke. He doesn't care about any of these other Breen. So now I'm gonna kick him in the nuts, take his stick, shoot him, and rule these people.
I think Maul's a good poker player. She knows when to take a risk on a high-stakes gamble because if it pays off everything. And the risk paid off that time. And clearly she, like, honestly, I think she does probably pretty good threat assessment. That's the kind of couriers they were. Yeah, they lived life on the risky side of things, but I'm sure they learned quite a bit about what risks to take and what risks not to take, and that was at least a solid shot.
Well, we're positioned to have a pretty big, action-packed, eventful 2-part finale in the next couple of weeks. I don't know, how do you feel about where Maul is positioned to be the antagonist of the final season of Discovery?
You know, because I like her, I don't want her to be the bad guy. But we've seen her empathy, that she didn't want to like destroy the library and stuff like that. She's not a monster. She's a person with a very specific goal. She equates somewhat with who was the last season? Who was the guy who was working with Book against the 10?
Tarka.
She equates somewhat with Tarka. You know, as a passion and love driven person, but I think she's got a better opportunity for redemption. And honestly, because she doesn't want to rule the Breen. I don't think that would be like. I mean, I guess it would get them off her back, but it doesn't feel like that would be her end goal. I think she just wants to get out and, you know, live a normal life with Locke.
Yeah.
Although arguably Tarka felt the same way, but he was just willing to, you know, put the whole galaxy at risk to do it. Anyway, I can't quite picture how this plays out, that's totally cool. I shouldn't be able to know all the beats ahead of time. I'm a little nervous about it. Like, I want her and Locke to somehow end up in a place I like. I don't mind them being outlaws, but I kind of don't want them to become monsters. That would be honestly my biggest fear, is that she'll do something kind of monstrous.
That's what I said last week. Like, the most exciting thing is the Maul Locke stuff for me, because it's like we don't have any idea, you know, where they're going to end up.
Yeah, they don't have to get a happy ending or a survive to be used on other shows kind of thing. They could get killed off.
I am really excited to see the next Book and Maul scene. Whatever it is, wherever it is, however that plays out, I'm dying to see that. That is what I'm eager to see.
They can both bring a lot of energy to that kind of stuff.
But yeah, how is Book gonna deal with Maul now that she's in command of this Breen dreadnought ship? And I don't know, like, what will the progenitor tech end up being used on the world route, or what will happen there, or will maybe Maul will die to bring Locke back, and he'll come back and be like, "What? My wife is dead. What's going on?" And like, I don't know. There's all kinds of neat things that might happen over the next 2 weeks. I'm excited to find out. Do you have any final thoughts on Labyrinths?
Let's see. I'm just double checking my notes. I think we hit most of the things that I wanted to mention. Yeah. No. Is there anything else we wanted to say about Burnham? She early on, I did think it was interesting in, I think, episode 1, when she and Book are back together, working together in episode 1, right? She pulled him in to go to the help her out with this, and at the time they both said, well, why have we lost touch? We haven't talked in a while. And they kind of joked a little bit. He's like, "Oh, I thought it was you," and she's like, "Oh, I think it was you who didn't reach out, or whatever." And now that little plot line has come full circle, and it seems like Michael is maybe suggesting a little bit more that it was her, that she did pull back. She was so focused on other things. Afraid of not being a good enough or a good enough partner or whatever, that she might have been the one who pulled back more, and I like that. I'm glad to see these sort of vulnerable Trek characters acknowledged, and that arc is kind of wrapping in time to see, well, what can she, this more complete perhaps Burnham, and perhaps able to reignite things with Book. Will she be in these last 2 episodes more powerful? Will she Super Saiyan as she becomes a more complete person?
Oh yeah, I like that. Maybe she's like at her best when she's got Book incorporated back into her life.
Right, and not with any sort of pauses and hesitancies and pain between them, or with it minimized at least. So I think that would be cool.
Very good.
We'll find out.
Well, let's go ahead and go into the Gorn-Egg section of the show. That's where we like to talk about the in-jokes, Easter eggs, and continuity connections we thought would be fun to mention, starting with Hyrel's inclusion. She is indeed a returning Star Trek species. She is an Afrosian. We have not seen one of those in a hot minute, but they were in Star Trek 4 as the helmsman on the Saratoga, and then we saw one as Federation president in Star Trek 6.
Proud lineage.
Yeah, so we got a Starship helmsman, Federation president, and a gallery archivist. The Badlands was actually a frequently visited location in Deep Space Nine. We also saw it in Voyager. But the idea of navigating the Badlands by killing your engines and riding the currents, we saw that before with Ezri Dax. That's how she found Worf's escape pod in DS9. The nucleonic beam that projected the dream into Michael Burnham's brain, that was similar to the technology in The Inner Light. A nucleonic beam was used to put the captain of that show in a similar situation where he was having to exist in a dream world that the crew couldn't wake him from. And not only is there a nucleonic beam in this episode, but I liked that the shield burrowing technology, that was a positron beam, just because we haven't had mention of a positron beam in Star Trek lately, and I just wish they would have called it positron beam instead of tunnel. But I don't know, maybe that's just me being weird.
Father, just as a quick interruption of the Gorn eggs, that was the thing that I wanted to mention earlier, is when Stamets and Adira are kind of vibing, and they're all their sciences going on, and they're doing a little almost Geordie Data, I feel like, and there's Jet Reno encouraging them on. That was a really fun little sequence. I really liked them saying speaking in unison as they figured things out, and Jet Reno kind of being, I'm going to say, as much as she can be, tickled by it.
I liked the cuteness of that scene, but I'm going to add in a criticism of the show. More not of that scene, but just of the show at large. When Reno was the one who knew the secret of how to get into how to stop the Breen tunnel tech. I wish that had been Adira. I wish that had been like Adira mentioning something from like a past Trill life. I thought it was a good opportunity that they squandered.
You've mentioned that in the past, and it is true. It is a weird thing to kind of forget how much you can draw on Trill experiences. It's almost like it's a superpower, in a lot of ways, as far as like it can solve a lot of problems. And you don't want to just have somebody pausing to say, "Oh, I remember how I was cool before, and here's a cool thing from when I was cool." But yeah, I think there's a balance to be struck. They did it with Deep Space Nine all the time, and so yeah, I agree with you, Father. That's a little bit of a missed opportunity.
And I will say that Blue Del Barrio is the guest on Ready Room next week, so I think it's a safe bet that there's going to be a lot of Adira in episode 9. So I don't know, maybe Adira will shine in episode 9.
Cool. I need to watch this week's one that you were talking about. I've been watching them all this season. I've enjoyed all of them, so I'm sure I will get something from it.
Well, also in the Gornags, I wanted to point out that our Betazoid archivist had a very interesting reading list. So we had some a real thing with the use. I'm not even going to try to say this word, but like the kind of geometry. But there were 2 made-up Star Trek things. We had a comprehensive guide to Talaxian hairstyles and Hyperion folktales. So the Talaxian hairstyles had to come from Neelix. It's just weird because every Talaxian we saw had like the same like orange Trump hair, but also kind of a mullet thing that Neelix had.
And it was also like a little bit of a mohawk or a faux hawk.
Yeah.
All the worst things in the world combined.
So a comprehensive guide to the worst hairstyle, but Hyperion folk tales are interesting. Hyperions were Mayher-Du was like the main Hyperion, but the big, tall manservant guy who served the Nagus in Deep Space Nine, and then we saw a Hyperion serve when Zek was Nagus, he had Mayher-Du as his servant, and then when Brunt tried to be Nagus for a little bit, he had a different Hyperion, and then in Lower Decks we see Grand Nagus Rom actually has a woman Hyperion servant. So, but that's where the Hyperion folktales came from, was that species, and not to be confused with Hyperions, but Hysperians, different planet, but Hysperia that Jet Reno mentioned, and how the Hysperians know how to party. That's a planet from Lower Decks. Dave, that's like a colony planet of like Ren Fair people from Earth who wanted to go party with like dragons and castles and stuff.
I did. I looked this one up. I just happened to look it up while I was watching. I don't always do that, but I just quick Googled it, and I was like, oh, that's fun. Something from Lower Decks finally making it, like, not that they haven't done a crossover, of course, but like the lore of it showing up in other Trek shows. That's cool.
And finally, we did get a new operations officer near the end of the episode, who I think is going to have a bigger role next week. But we have Lieutenant Jameson, who we can assume is named after astronaut Mae Jemison, who actually cameoed on Star Trek. We saw her appear in uniform in Star Trek The Next Generation. And they also mention a Dr. Jemison at the astronaut ball in Picard Season 2. So she both, plays a Starfleet officer, and then they kind of shoe in an off-screen cameo of her real-life individual person as an astronaut in Picard Season 2.
The person playing the new Jameson isn't like the daughter of that person, is it?
No, I think that they just cast an actress as her, and we're like, oh, cool, yeah, we'll get a black woman to play the character we name after the black woman astronaut.
It's weird to bring in any supporting bridge crew, though, 2 episodes from... I mean, I know they didn't know it was the series finale, but...
It's only weird because Discovery makes a point of giving those people names and pointing out look, a different person is in the chair. This person's name is blah blah blah, because so many people complained on the internet of why don't we know anything about these people?
Is that how they did it, Father?
Yes.
Yeah, I've never actually had any issue with the supporting characters being supporting characters who just kind of get a moment here and there. So I'm not oh no, where are Detmer and Owo? Other than, I like them, but it's not a big issue for me.
Yeah, I think they do a better job with those support characters in season 5. Like what they did with Reese in this episode. I like that so much more than the way that they would try to force those people into having bigger moments in season 4 that I thought felt so forced. They just felt forced.
Yeah, Reese was he in the captain's chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, good for him.
And he should have been. This was the time you put the security dude in the captain's chair in the situation. And then you have Science Officer Tilly advising him. So I thought that was, that was good captaining. That was good delegation, my Captain Burnham. Not that you need some dipshit in Austin, Texas to approve of your captaining. But... Hey,
look, she does take too much individual responsibility on. She needs to learn to delegate a little bit. A little bit of Picard in there would probably be good.
Yeah. That's something that Taylor pointed out as we're seeing Picard's command style on TNG. She's like, oh, I guess Kirk was more of a micromanager, and this guy is more of a delegator.
Yeah, it's interesting because that marks a transition from thinking about the captain in a sort of different way, instead of being the action hero, to have him become I think more what you would really want in a slightly more realistic take on these things, and. But yeah, that was probably on my mind precisely because you had mentioned something about it off mic earlier.
Well, that's all we got for Labyrinths, but y'all just heard Dave and I talk about it for over an hour. We would love to hear y'all's thoughts on it. We can share your responses if you give them to us. You can comment on YouTube. You can reply to my posts all over social media. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all of that at Tex-Trek. Or join our Discord server and sound off in there and tell us what you thought about Labyrinths. We received some subspace transmissions from last week's episode, Eriga. So, Dave, what are people saying about Eriga?
Hey, Father, remind me real quick before I jump into this. What were the big story beats in Eriga?
That was the Breen come to Starfleet HQ, and Tarina does a lot of diplomacy, and then they Locke dies and they leave with Maul. Right on.
Cool. Yep, that's just the exact recap I needed. Thank you. All right, so let's go to Blue Sky first, where Hawktrex says felt a bit water tready. Moving to set up the finale, but I massively enjoyed the negotiation tactics, and Tarina is a gift that keeps giving, and any scene with Reno is a winner. Referring to the lack of a certain character, Opinions No One Cares About says, unfortunately, he's been more like inaction Saru this season. And, that is true. Now, they for me at least, and as Saru fan number 1, they did give him an official send-off. I'm happy to have any scenes with Saru, but it was clear he was leaving the show. But yes, I would like, we better get at least a little bit of action Saru before this season wraps.
Well, good news. I think Saru is in all the upcoming episodes of Discovery.
Ooh,
so all 2 of them, I think, will have Saru.
Father, do you think on the wedding night he will return to being action Saru?
I'm sure there will be some actions.
But... I hope so. They deserve it. All right. Let's see. Over on Threads, the Sunshine Empire says, I love how the 32nd century Breen are Daft Punk. Fatheree, I believe you responded, it looked like, to say they look like metalheads here. This would make a sick album cover. And but a dissenting voice from, how does it pronounce this? And Lupercio, maybe, says, boo to taking their helmet off, killed the mystique of them, what made them scary. I thought you had an interesting point, Fatheree, that they kind of walked a balance between keeping them sort of unknown in like episodes like this one. Like we're learning more facts about them, but they're still kind of unknowable a bit.
Yeah, they're still pretty alien. Like, I'm okay getting to know Locke. He's a atypical Breen, and then we can have Maul kind of be like the proxy. Like, let her be the character that our characters interact with. And it can be like the antagonist of the story, and then have like all the cool Breen mysteriousness around her. I think it works. They found a balance that works for me. This little Star Trek fan is happy with the Breen presentation, but hopefully I continue to be.
That's all I've got from Subspace Transmissions. Thanks for messaging us, y'all. As always, keep it up.
Yeah, and it's sad. There's only 2 more of these. So if you want to get any Subspace Transmissions in on Discovery, you only got 2 more episodes.
We will have to chime in on. We'll have to do at least one kind of big wrap up or series wrap up or something like that. So maybe they'll have a third chance. But yeah,
I'll be curious what people think about the entire season 5 and the entire show overall after the dust settles in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then of course we'll have to revisit this in a decade or so and see how it is after people have had.
I've thought about that. When is like too soon to revisit this? Is it like 25 years? Is that going to be too soon? I think 25 is a good number.
No, things move faster now. Like a franchise gets a shot at a movie.
I'm not doing the 10-year anniversary is in 3 years though. Like I feel like 3 years from now is not enough time to do like a big like return to Discovery.
10 years from the finale, Fatheree. 10 years from the finale is reasonable, I think.
But that's not how they always go. They always go off of the premiere with this stuff. So I think it'll be by the time it's 25 years from the premiere, that's only going to be what? That'll be 20. What's 17 plus 25?
I don't know. This is our show, Fatheree. We can do it however we want. We don't have to do what the man tells us to do.
It's 42, right?
10 years from
2042.
Yeah, probably. 10 years from when the series ends would be a good time for a retrospective.
That'll be 2034.
Yep. I think that works.
We'll see. Y'all let us know. Y'all let us know when you're ready for a return to Disco, and that's when we'll know it's time. But we'll be returning to season 5 next week for episode 9, our penultimate episode, Lagrange points. That's the point between like 2 forces of gravity, right?
Yeah, like when you're like midway between the pull of the sun and the earth or something like that, and you're just sitting there. But it does refer to like I think something that'd be kind of like stationary usually, but is it Lagrange points? Like
Lagrange points plural. I think that the Progenitor tech, I think it's going to be hidden between like 2 black holes or something like that.
Okay.
Two high gravity. I think black holes would be like the funnest one, but between 2 high gravity objects, I think.
Fatheree, what if it's a reference to ZZ Top's song Lagrange?
Hey, Lagrange, Texas. We used to play them in high school all the time, and that's like a little town near here that had a very famous whorehouse that a rock band made a song about.
Yep, and I believe was the inspiration for the Dolly Parton, the Broadway play and Dolly Parton movie, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Bit of trivia here. When I was a kid, literally just random bit of weirdness, I auditioned for a role of some kid in that movie. True.
Well, I'm glad that we dodged that bullet.
No, that could have been my awesome start, Fatheree. I could have been a very different Dave than you know.
Oh, now. You would have got like the child actor career. That tends to work out so well for people.
Right,
so.
Right. You can bring in alcoholic Dave to comment on Star Trek.
Yeah, get Will Wheaton to talk about his childhood.
Jeez, this poor guy.
But no, we'll be talking about Discovery next week with Lagrange points. Michelle Paradise talked about it. She said some fun things to tease it about next week's episode. Showrunner Michelle Paradise says Discovery in a location where you've never seen her before. So between 2 black holes, I think that could work. But we'll find out soon.
I like these little teases. They're fun.
Yeah, and we get one more next week, so I'm looking forward to that. from Michelle, and I'm looking forward to the episode that she's given us next week. That is going to be directed by Jonathan Frakes, the final Frakes disco.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
And
let's as Burnham has said, let's solve that last mystery or solve that last riddle.
Well, until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.